the schizophrenia. When you hear this word, you probably think of the maniacs with split mind or multiple personality you've seen in the movies, who once think they're a child, the next time they think they're Julius Caesar or whatever. Well, these delusions are unfortunately mostly due to the various Hollywood movies that tend to present a false image of this often very serious mental illness, and also to the fact that it can often be linked to other psychiatric and organ disorders. In this video, you will meet some of the world's best-known painters, actors, and musicians who have struggled with, battled, or even successfully overcome severe or less severe forms of schizophrenia. But before we get started, I think it is important to dispel some misconceptions about this mental illness. Schizophrenia is not at all the same as split or multiple personalities. Multiple personality disorder is a completely different, much rarer disorder called dissociative identity disorder. Most schizophrenic patients are not aggressive at all. In fact, they are mostly withdrawn and do not seek the company of others. Not all paranoid or distrustful people are schizophrenic. There are patients who behave in a paranoid way. For example, they tend to be suspicious and distrustful of others without showing any other signs of schizophrenia. Not everyone who hears voices is schizophrenic. Some people with depression may also hear voices, even as a side effect of medication. Well, now that we've dispelled some misconceptions, meet some of the celebrities who have struggled with this mental illness, or a form of it. Richard Dadd. The Victorian English artist Richard Dadd became famous for his highly detailed depictions of Eastern-inspired and supernatural scenes. His first recorded psychotic attack occurred in December 1842 in a boat on the Nile, during which he threw himself wildly and visualized his mind being abducted by the ancient Egyptian Osiris. After returning home to England the following year, he became increasingly convinced that his father was the devil in disguise, so he stabbed him with a knife and fled to France to escape. On his way there, he tried to kill a tourist with a razor blade, but luckily the police intervened and arrested him. After he confessed to killing his father, he was taken back to England, where he was committed to the notorious Bethlem, a psychiatric institution where he eventually created his most famous works. Dadd is believed to have suffered from paranoid schizophrenia. Vincent van Gogh. The name of this painter is also known for those less familiar with the world of art, as his works and his name are often found in everyday life. We can only deduce his illness from the stories and narratives that survive about him. You may have heard of one of these stories. On one occasion, Van Gogh and his painter friend Paul Gauguin, who was himself suffering from severe depressive attacks, had a heated argument during which Van Gogh allegedly heard a voice saying to him, "Kill him, kill him." Gauguin was lucky because Van Gogh cut off his own ear with a knife instead of killing him. Although there are several versions of this ear-cutting circulating on the internet, we will never really know the truth about it. Some psychiatrists explain his behavior as depression or bipolar disorder. Veronica Lake. The beautiful actress turned the heads of millions of men in the early 40s through movies such as The Blue Dahlia, Sullivan's Travels, and Hold Back the Dawn. But as it turned out, she was a real falling star. She was only 10 when she lost her father, who died in an oil tanker explosion. Veronica was then diagnosed with schizophrenia, which is thought to have been caused by the loss of her father, although opinions are divided. Her mother and foster father thought that acting would help her control her illness, but in Hollywood she became known not only for her roles, but also for her difficult personality. A 1944 magazine described the actress as a time bomb. In 1948, Paramount Pictures refused to tolerate her whims any longer and fired the actress, who then took refuge in alcohol. In the late 60s, her health deteriorated severely, and her schizophrenia led to paranoia and hepatitis. In her last weeks, she was hospitalized until she died of kidney failure at the age of 50, without being visited by any of her 3 children. Jim Gordon. Gordon was one of the most popular studio drummers of the 60s and 70s, having contributed to the albums of many great musicians such as John Lennon, Frank Zappa, and Jackson Browne, and even winning a Grammy Award for his song Layla with Eric Clapton. It is not known when he was diagnosed with schizophrenia exactly, but it is certain that during a tour with Joe Cocker in the early 1970s, he beat and injured his then-girlfriend Rita Coolidge in a hotel corridor. At this time, Gordon was already hearing voices, including that of his mother, whose imaginary voice forced him to starve himself and prevented him from sleeping or being able to play the drums. Doctors misdiagnosed him and began treating him for alcohol problems. However, on the 3rd of June 1983, everything changed when he attacked his 72-year-old mother with a hammer and then killed her with a butcher knife. When he was arrested, he claimed that a voice had forced him to commit this brutal act. His illness was properly diagnosed at the time, but this was not accepted as a defense at his trial, and Gordon was sentenced to 16 years in prison on the 10th of July, 1984. He made several attempts at parole, but his application was regularly rejected on the grounds that he was still seriously insane. Jim Gordon finally died in prison on the 13th of March 2023, age 77. Peter Green. Green was a founding member of the band Fleetwood Mac and was a rock guitarist until his death. Although very little is known about his illness and its symptoms, it is certain that he spent a lot of time in various psychiatric institutions in the 1970s, where he was treated with electroshock therapy, and in the meantime he became addicted to various drugs, such as LSD. Fortunately, his condition began to improve after he was admitted to a hospital for mental illness. Green remained active in music until his death on the 25th of July, 2020. Lionel Aldridge. Aldridge enjoyed a distinguished career as a footballer in the 1960s and also worked as an analyst for NBC and was even inducted into the Hall of Fame. But by the age of 30, he became increasingly paranoid and hallucinatory and was diagnosed with schizophrenia. His illness led him to abandon himself so much that he even lost his house and lived for a time as a homeless man. He eventually regained control of his illness through medication, which he openly embraced for a few years before his death in 1998. His message to the world: people can and do recover from mental illness. John Nash, Jr. The name of the scientist will ring a bell for those who have seen the biopic A Beautiful Mind, which is based on his life. Until the age of 30, Nash was considered one of the world's greatest mathematicians, but then he developed delusions and schizophrenia. His illness came to light in 1959 when a lecture he gave was so confused and incomprehensible that his colleagues and the audience immediately realized something was wrong. The 20 years that followed were mostly about his illness and his hospital treatments. One of his delusions was that anyone wearing a red tie was part of a communist conspiracy. After a long period of time, when his symptoms finally subsided, he was able to return to work at Princeton University and was awarded the Nobel Prize in 1994. Nash and his wife eventually died in a tragic car accident in 2015. Edvard Munch. Who wouldn't know the world-famous painting Scream, about whose creator only a few know that after the age of 40, a kind of madness and anxiety began to take over. He often felt that he was surrounded by death, tormented by nightmares and eerie visions, which most probably had a significant influence on his artistic style and mood. The hallucinations and his anxiety eventually led him to drink heavily, and his symptoms intensified until he suffered a nervous breakdown in 1908. He was then admitted to a psychiatric clinic where he completely gave up alcohol within 8 months, and his condition improved considerably. He continued to work until his death in 1944, a period of more than 36 years. He finally died of bronchitis at the age of 80. Not only them, of course, but many other famous people have suffered from the same disease, such as the English painter Louis Wain, the Franco-Russian painter Nicholas de Staël, the Russian-Jewish painter Mark Rothko, the American artist Georgia O'Keeffe, the Spanish painter and graphic artist Francisco José de Goya, and even Michelangelo. Well, as you can see, there are quite a few of these cases in the art world, but by learning their stories, you can get a little more insight into this terrible disease that can destroy entire lives and careers, friendships and marriages. But remember that such people should not be written off either, because with the right treatment, their condition can be controlled. Don't forget to check out my older videos on the channel, like the video if you like it, and subscribe so you don't miss out on upcoming videos. Thank you very much for your attention. I will be back soon with the next video.